Hey guys, we're going to go over the next set of notes for our science class. And so I'll just be walking through you guys on not only the ecological levels of organization, but also just how energy flows throughout an ecosystem. So the first thing that we need to talk about, all right, is going to be just like our organization levels for cells and going from a cell, okay, to tissues, to organs, and to body systems. Okay, now we're going to create a whole new set of organization, working our way up from organisms this time all the way up to a biosphere. So what's going to happen is we're going to start with the organism because we left with the body system, which is going to actually give us an organism. Okay, so we actually are going to take body system and we're going to start right from there. We're going to organism. Now we have a group of organisms. That is going to be our population. Let me just erase some things quick. We'll go back. So we have one organism. Now we have a group of the same organism called a population. Okay, so here we're talking about a bison. Okay, a single bison, but now we have a herd. All right. And so what's going to happen is there are multiple organisms. All right. Then there's going to be a community. So we're going to have not only bison, but we're going to have other organisms. Okay. You can see it's hard to read, but a snake, bison, prairie dogs, grass, okay, hawks. All these things are going to make up the community. Okay. It's how they interact. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about communities, and we're going to spend even more time talking about the ecosystem. So community is only talking about the living things. Okay, whereas an ecosystem is going to take, and remember, living things are going to be or biotic factors, whereas the ecosystem is going to have biotic factors, but it's also going to have abiotic factors. All right, so abiotic factors are going to be non-living. That's what the A stands for. So now we are including the community and the non-living surroundings. So we're talking about the wind, we're talking about rainfall, we're talking about the temperature, we're talking about all these different things, okay? And then lastly, we're going to have all the ecosystems put together to make up, actually, we probably should have something in here before biosphere, like biome, okay? Biome. You guys read about biomes last week, or should have at least. And then all the biomes make up a biosphere. And so a biome is just going to be a couple different ecosystems that are in the same area and come together to make up an area of like ecosystems, basically. And then that is going to come together to make a biosphere. All right, so let's keep going. That's our organization, and let's keep on moving. Here we go. Next slide. All right, so energy flow in the ecosystem. We have a lot to talk about. Okay, so all these notes, we're going to cover all these different things, and you might want to come when you come back to this video. You might want to fast forward to re-look at various things because there's a lot of information here. Okay, there's a lot of information. So we have photosynthesis, which we are pretty familiar with. We're going to go over the equation, and that's how we're going to get all of our energy from our for our organisms. Okay. Then we have cellular respiration. That's how our organisms are going to transform energy that they eat into energy they can actually use to move around with. Then we're going to talk about ecological niche, okay, or niche, some people call it. But a niche is just the role that an organism plays inside the ecosystem. Okay, then we have producers versus consumers. Producers are going to do exactly that. They're going to produce all the energy. Consumers are going to consume that energy. Okay, then we're going to talk about herbivores, who are organisms that only eat plants. We're going to talk about carnivores, which are organisms that only eat other organisms, okay, eat meat. And then we're going to talk about omnivores, or ones that do both, okay? They do both. They eat plants and they also eat meat. Okay. We will touch briefly on scavengers. They're just going to eat all the dead things, all the things that are left over from our above herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores, mainly carnivores. And then we're going to look at all those different organisms and what they eat and where they get their energy from. And we're going to look at how we're going to organize that. Okay. So the first thing we're going to look at, and the simplest one, is going to be food chains. All right. Then we're going to talk about trophic levels. Okay. Then basically a bunch of food chains all together are going to make a food web, so a little bit more complex. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the pyramids. Trophic levels and ecological pyramids kind of go together in food chains and food webs. They all relate to one another, but you'll see in the way that we are looking at these notes exactly what I mean here in a second. So let's keep on going. There's your overview. Feel free to skip around to things, especially if you're looking at this video a second time, to things that you need help with. So let's keep on going. Now we're looking at where do we get all of our energy from? Okay, so where do we get our energy from? We get it from the sun. All right, we get all of our energy from the sun. That has not changed. Without the sun, we would not have any energy. We would not be alive. Okay, none of the organisms on the planet would be alive either. So all the energy is originating from the sun, 100% of it. All right. That energy is going to come in from the sun, and 51% of it, okay, is going to be absorbed by the land. All right. We're just going to work down from these numbers. 30% of it is going to be reflected by clouds in the Earth's surface. Okay. So we're not even getting all the energy that we could from the sun. Okay. And then lastly, 19% is going to be absorbed by the atmosphere and clouds. All right. So that only leaves us with a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of energy coming from the sun. Okay. You see, we only take care of about 0.02% of the total energy coming from the sun. Can you imagine if we could take advantage of more of that energy? That would be pretty incredible. And so basically, plants only have this much energy to work with and to feed into all of our ecosystems, into our entire, all of our biomes and biosphere, which is, the biosphere is just the Earth. Okay. So what I want you to realize is that there's so much more energy that the sun has to offer than the ones that our plants are able to actually pick up and use. So let's keep on going. All right. So when we're talking about producers and consumers, number one, okay, producers, they are going to be plants. All right, they're going to be plants, and they are going to collect all of the energy from the sun. Okay, remember that was about 0.02% of all the sun's energy is being collected by all the plants on the planet. All right, and they are producing energy in the form of, and we'll talk about it in a second, but in the form of glucose, okay, because they're undergoing photosynthesis, and then animals are going to then eat this glucose. Okay, and what are the animals? Okay, they're going to be our consumers. Let me just use a different color here. Okay, so our animals are going to consume things. Consumers is someone who is going to buy, well, in like the market or the economy, they would buy things, but they're going to use things up. They're going to eat them in our for our purposes. Okay, so consumers are going to eat things such as other living things or producers, okay, directly. So they're going to eat plants. And we'll talk about all the different types of producers here in a second. So let's keep on going. Let's move on to photosynthesis. So in photosynthesis, okay, we've talked a lot about this. Let's see if I can move my camera up a little bit. But in photosynthesis, okay, we have our equation at the bottom. Hopefully you have not forgotten that yet. We've kind of tried to drive that home pretty hard this year, okay? But this is basically the way that producers get their energy, okay? And so what we need is we need to remember not only the equation, but why things work the way they do, all right? So we need carbon dioxide, all right? We need water, okay? And then we need that light energy to convert that carbon dioxide and water into energy that is stored in the form of sugar or glucose, and then plants are also going to produce oxygen. And we're going to see that this is kind of a cycle with our cellular respiration, which is going to allow basically this eternal rotation of converting things into energy and producing oxygen. And then us as animals, we're going to use that oxygen to create energy with our bodies. And so we kind of work very, very well together. All right. But the number one thing to take away is producers. They're the ones that are going to produce the energy. Okay. The energy is in the sugar right here. NRG. The energy from this side would be the light energy. Okay. The light energy. You see it's written on the arrow this time. I've made you guys write it as radiant. NRG. Okay. But we just moved it to put it above the arrow. But you still need, all we're doing is energy transformation. So let's keep on going. We got a ton of slides to cover here. But photosynthesis is really, really key, especially in the way that producers make the energy that we need. All right. Let's get rid of the notes here. All right. So carbon dioxide and water. This is just going to show us a little picture how plants are going to collect the water and nutrients from the soil, and then they're going to collect the carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide is a gas. We breathe it out, okay? And then they're going to get those sun rays and use that energy, combine all these together through the chemical reaction to create oxygen and then sugar or glucose, okay? And they're going to use that sugar and glucose, okay? That's how the plant is going to grow, all right? That's how it's going to grow and get bigger and produce more offspring and everything like that, all right? So let's keep on going. Cellular respiration. This is our other side to the cycle, okay? This is the one that animals wind up doing. And so what happens is, just let me move my camera down. All right, the process where sugar is converted into carbon dioxide or CO2, H2O, and energy, which will wind up being ATP at the very end. Okay, that is the chemical that our cells are using to actually carry out and do different things. Okay, so the organism uses this energy to do everything. All right, and so where do they get that energy? Well, we're getting it from sugar and oxygen produced by plants, also known as producers. So producers are doing this side over here, whereas on the opposite side, carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP. Okay, the consumers are actually going to produce, so to speak. Okay, so they're going to produce CO2 by breathing it out. They're also going to produce H2O by breathing it out. And then we're going to use that energy to operate our bodies and run around. We're going to create heat with it as well. We got to keep ourselves warm. Okay, we got to use that energy wisely. So let's keep on going. Again, looking at our equation, I'm just going to skip ahead to this next slide. We've talked about this a couple different times in class, but basically, I'm just going to throw that out. Our carbon dioxide and water is going to be produced as sugar and oxygen. Then that is going to be used over here. And you can see this cycle, all right? This cycle that is happening. And then it goes all the way back to the beginning, all right? This is really, really key because plants and animals work together to do this, all right? So let's keep on going. This is all review stuff so far. So energy transformations, we've kind of talked about all of these already. But radiant energy, that's going to be your sun. Okay. Chemical energy, we're talking about glucose. So this one, we could call it stored chemical energy. Okay. Whereas when we talk about ATP, okay, chemical energy in the form of ATP, that is going to be energy that we actually use. So that's usable, okay, energy that we're going to use for our cells to actually carry out certain tasks and do certain things, okay? And then lastly, we're going to have kinetic / mechanical energy. This is what we're using the ATP to do, is to move. And then it's going to create thermal energy, which is just heat. And so we think of that as our body heat, or anytime we move, we are creating some type of heat. We're releasing a lot of it as thermal energy. And so we'll talk about that later in the slides, and how we use that thermal energy. And basically how it winds up, most of the energy gets moved to thermal energy. So let's keep on going. So photosynthesis and life. All right. This is important, and what I want to point out too, and we said it right away, we completely rely on the sun. Okay, we completely rely on the sun and its ability to give us all the energy that we possibly need. All right. No sun means no photosynthesis. Okay, which means no food for plants. And guess what? Plants are the base of all of our food chains. All right. No food for animals, that means, and then that means no food for larger animals. Okay. And we're going to talk about this entire process here in a moment, about branching from producers to consumers to secondary consumers to tertiary consumers. Okay. In this entire process. All right. So basically what we're highlighting here is no sun equals no life on Earth. All right. And so this is the basis behind the dinosaur extinction. Those of you that are not familiar, basically what happened to the dinosaurs is there was this huge meteor that hit around the Gulf of Mexico, just north of, well, in the Gulf of Mexico. And so what happened is it not only killed a lot of things in this area by that impact, but also kicked up so much dirt and debris into the atmosphere that it blocked out the sun. Okay. And so basically by blocking out the sun, that means no sun, no photosynthesis, no food, and then no more dinosaurs. And that's just the simplest way to put it. Now, did everything die? No. Okay, because there was some food, if we're going to be very specific. Okay, there was some food. There was just so much less of it. Okay, dinosaurs were so big. And so during that period of time, there was a lot more oxygen in the air, in the atmosphere. And there was also a lot more food being produced. Okay, because there was so much oxygen. Okay, remember, we add oxygen. Let me just quickly scroll back to our equation here. Right here. Yep. So remember, there's more oxygen in the air. Sorry, I won't switch. If there's more oxygen, all right, oxygen goes up, then that means our production, like basically, if we increase the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, we're going to increase the amount of sugar and oxygen that we produce, which is going to increase the amount of carbon dioxide, water, and energy that we produce, which is going to increase. Basically, what I'm saying is there are more resources for dinosaurs. And so when we lost that sunlight, we're not able to produce any of this. Okay, there's not as much energy available for dinosaurs to eat. And so if you're a bigger organism, you need to eat more. Okay, you need to have more energy. And so what happens is there's not enough resources for them, and they wind up dying. Okay, so let's go back to our dinosaurs. And let's erase all this junk. All right, so let's go to ecological niches. And so a niche, like we said, it's a role that's being played, okay, a role or a function of a species, all right, that it serves within the ecosystem. So it's how does this organism relate to its ecosystem? So if we're talking about a wolf, we're talking about what is the role of the wolf inside certain forests or prairie ecosystems. Okay, what are they doing? All right, or what are they eating? What eats it, and how does it behave? Okay, how does it interact with other organisms? All right, no species occupy the same niche. I'm just going to let you guys think about why that would be for a second. I'm going to come back to you. Just pause the video and think about it. But basically, what's happening here is the reason we can't have two organisms do the same niche is that those organisms are going to wind up competing with one another, and one is going to win out. Okay, one's going to have to find a new niche, or else it's going to die out. And so that's why organisms we'll talk about in further lectures. We're going to talk about adaptations and natural selection, and how certain organisms are just going to die out because they can't function in the current status of their ecosystem. Okay, their niche is being taken up by something, or their niche is taken away, like the dinosaurs. Okay, there's not enough resources, so their niche of eating lots and lots of energy and lots of food, that doesn't work anymore. And so it lent itself to smaller animals, and they're able to survive. Okay, so let's continue here. We're already on slide 14. All right. So types of consumers. So the next couple slides are all going to be on different types of consumers. Speaking of which, we're talking about herbivores, which are going to be your vegetarians. They're only going to eat plants. That's all they're going to eat. Okay, then we're going to have carnivores. All right, they're going to eat other animals. There are meat eaters. All right, and then we're going to have omnivores. Okay, omnivores are going to do both. Okay, they're going to do both, which is pretty cool. That's what we are, right? I know people can choose to eat only plants, or they can choose to only eat meat, but we are capable of eating both. And so that's what makes us an omnivore, and that's why we would choose for a human to be an omnivore. Okay, not necessarily, we're not talking about your choice, we're talking about what are you capable of doing. All right, and so scavengers and decomposers, they are going to eat all the things. When herbivores and carnivores and omnivores, when they all die, the scavengers and decomposers, they are going to eat the carcasses, the dead bodies. Okay, the organism that feeds and breaks down, that's key. Okay, they break down the remains of other organisms. Otherwise, we'd have a bunch of dead stuff piling up everywhere. So these are really, really important to our ecosystems, because they're going to return nutrients to the ecosystem. Okay, let's keep going. So again, like we talked about, organisms that eat plants or other producers, that's going to be our herbivores, that's our deer, that's our cows, that's going to be giraffes, that's going to be, there's all kinds of these herbivores. You see them in every type of ecosystem. Some of them wind up getting pretty big. And so that's why they're a main target for carnivores, because there is a lot of energy within those animals, but they wind up eating so much grass, okay, to produce one of these cows or one of these deer. Okay, they have to eat so much grass or so many berries or so many trees, whatever they eat. It depends on the organism, obviously, but they have to eat a ton of grass to make one cow. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. Okay, as we move forward, it's going to help you with our ecological pyramids. All right, so like I said, now we got carnivores. All right, again, a hyena, in order to survive, has to eat a lot of elk throughout its entire lifespan. All right, one hyena is going to need I don't know how many elk it eats a month. Let's say it only eats 2, but let's say the hyena lives for 10 years. Okay, 2 times 12 would get us 24 elk per year. Lives for 10 years. That's 240 elk over the course of this hyena's life that it's going to eat. Okay, you can see, to make a hyena, to make a crocodile, to make a shark, you got to have a lot of things for them to eat over the course of their life. There are fewer sharks than there are other animals like seals or herbivores, okay, are producers. These carnivores are typically going to be our secondary and tertiary consumers, and we're going to talk about that in the coming slides. Okay, so let's keep on going. Omnivores are going to do both. They're going to take advantage of both plants and animals. And so they're also going to be secondary and tertiary consumers as well. Scavengers. Okay, scavengers, we're showing a vulture here because the vulture is going to wait for carrion, which is going to be just dead organisms or like roadkill. You see something that's hit on the side of the road, this vulture is going to wait. It has actually extremely good eyesight, and it's able to see when things are dying, or when a hyena is hunting its prey, or a tiger when it's hunting its prey, and then it's going to eat the remains, all right, and help decompose that hyena, all right. aren't going to talk about decomposers too much, but decomposers are going to wind up being various like mushrooms and other going to be like other bacteria that are going to break down those carcasses, those bones, the living material, and then return those nutrients back to the soil, back to the environment.